Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can determine whether what you're looking at when you're doing inspections is actually rotted or not. This comes in handy when you're looking at structural lumber that might be in a house or on a boat dock or a retaining wall or something like that. It's real easy to do, doesn't require a lot of tools, and it's pretty well foolproof. And it's called the pick test. And I'm going to walk you through how to conduct it. But first, a little background. One of the areas we inspect is any indication of modification of material that prevents it from doing its job. Examples would be crushing of the lumber, which changes its shape and also affects its structural integrity, and bending of lumber, which causes the material to be so overloaded it changes shape. These are areas we want to report due to their function and severity. And here's an indication of a 4x4 post that's got some lateral beams on it, and they're being crushed primarily because they're rotting out, but not a lot of indication. It might seem obvious to us, but honestly, to the layperson, there's not a lot of indication there's actually rot going on there. The paint's pretty well integral to this, but it is crushing. It's going to affect its ability to do its job and carry its load, and that's one of the things we want to report. And over embedding nails, the holding power of a nail is in its head, and when you pound it below the surface of a piece of lumber, you've actually crushed the cellulose material around that nail, which is going to affect its ability to do a job. And it's going to weaken it and cause it to maybe fail sooner than normal. Splitting is another concern. We see that a lot on posts and beams and boat docks and things like that. And of course, lumber exposed to the elements over a long period of time, the sun and the wet, are going to cause it to do what we're seeing here in this picture and pull the nails out and so forth and become loose. And before you know it, you have a tripping hazard. Decay and rust is something we're fighting constantly in our industry. Homes are notorious for succumbing to these things. Rusty nails are affected by the weather. Planks that disintegrate over time and age and exposure. Nails that are sticking up, causing people walking barefoot to maybe get injured. So why does it happen? Why does this happen? Well, because it has to do with the way the lumber is cut. There are a couple of ways you can cut lumber, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Quarter-sawn lumber has greater grain detail, but less shrinkage, which is a good quality to have when you use it in construction. However, it tends to be more expensive, so mostly it's used making furniture. Plain sawn has more growth ring detail, more shrinkage in width and thickness. Typically, that's going to be construction lumber. With plain sawn, you get more lumber per log, more economical to produce, and more likely used in construction, as I said. Here's what they look like. We've got various things going on here with warping and splitting and exposure to the elements. Nail pops, cupping is the opposite of warping, and that's what lumber is going to do over a period of time. Of course, we want to minimize that, but it's not always easy. And quarter sawn and plain sawn is how it's cut out of the log, illustrated by these two red boxes right here. Whether you're cutting perpendicular to the grain or parallel to the grain. So why does rot happen? Well, the culprits are there are basically two kinds of non-destructive fungi, mold fungi and stain fungi. Mold fungi is growth on non-organic surfaces, whereas stain fungi, such as mildew, grows anywhere there is high constant moisture. We're more concerned in our jobs and trying to find out or locate where decay fungi occurs. because that dissolves the cellulose to eat as food. Also, it'll eat anything organic, not just lumber. It'll eat clothing, leather, paper, anything that has cellulose backing in it. They do this by secreting enzymes that in turn dissolves the cellulose walls. That's how it gets consumed. The strength of wood is in the cellulose cells. So once they're destroyed, the strength of the lumber is diminished. Here's an example of a PVC sun chair, and you can see where mold is growing on the underside of it. It's not consuming anything. It's just living on the fact that there's moisture there and a constant exposure to it, and that allows it to survive. So what do you need in order to have decay fungi? In order for fungi to thrive, it needs 4 basic conditions. 1, it needs oxygen. Most fungi requires at least 20% oxygen for decay to activate and occur. 2, it needs moisture. Water is essential for decay and reproduction, but you don't want too much. 3, temperature. The ideal is 70 to 90 degrees. 4, you need something for it to eat. In this case, it's going to be the wood cells. Have you ever gone to the lumberyard and noticed, look at the stamp on the lumber that you might be buying, a 2x4? It's going to say a number of different things. And we'll get into that in a minute. Oh, okay, we'll get into it now. All kinds of things written here. It says here, should only be used above ground. This particular piece of lumber should only be used above ground. And it's been treated, and it's been kiln dried. That's what the KD means. It even gives you a date of manufacture. So a lot of important information depending on what you're going to use the lumber for. KD 19 means kiln dried to 19% moisture content. Why such an odd number? Well, the reason is because when you get below 20% moisture content in practically everything, not just lumber, it's going to cause the fungi spores to go dormant. They're not going to die, they're not going to go away, but they're not going to reproduce either. And if you can maintain a moisture content of 19 or less, your lumber is going to be intact for many, many years. Once it goes above 20%, 19, 20%, then the spores are going to activate, and rot and mildew are going to develop on that particular piece.
I got in.
So how do we stop fungi from growing? Well, if we eliminate any of the 4 that I just listed a second ago, then the spores will stop reproducing. All we have to do is eliminate any one of the 4, and the fungi will go dormant, stop digesting wood, and no longer reproduce. But the spores don't die, as I said. They wait for conditions to change in their favor. More often than not, rot and decay obvious by sight or by probing, but when it is not so obvious, try this method. Rot can be revealed on framing lumber, decking posts, so forth. Use an ice pick, an awl, a screwdriver, or anything similar that you can poke with. Penetrate the wood at an area that is known to be in good condition. That's going to be the control area. Then penetrate the wood at a suspected site and compare the two. That's going to be the rotting area. If fungal decay is present, it should be obvious as the splinter emerges. Here's an example of a telephone pole where we've taken our awl, we've pushed it into the lumber as much as we can. There's going to be a lot of resistance. This particular pole, by the way, doesn't look like it's in all that great a shape. But as we probe that splinter now that we've gotten our awl under and poke it up, we notice that it only breaks on one end. The other end is intact. That is a typical indication of the fact that there may not be any rot here. The wood splinter broke far from the pick. Also, it was difficult to penetrate the wood at any depth. One end of the splinter did not break at all. The wood underneath the splinter looks new and intact. No rot. Pretty easy, huh? This is a deck plank, and we've done the same procedure. We've taken our awl pushed it into the wood as much as we could until we meet resistance, and popped it up, and it broke in half. That is an indication there's rot developing there. This is a purlin. Purlins are found in attics, for in case you don't know that. And the same test was conducted. You notice that it broke in half right here where we probed. That purlin has got some rot in it. This is a 50-year-old Douglas fir, looks sound and healthy. The wood splinters, one end stays anchored, penetration is shallow. No rot developing. Conclusion. So pick away, folks, and have fun. You can pick your friends. You can pick your jobs. You can pick your nose. Just don't get caught.